Be me, Amy. 28, feminist. I guess you could say I'm what the internet gets angry about. I work in HR for a tech company. I have a degree in sociology, and my friends and I unironically use words like patriarchy and systemic issues in conversation. To be clear, I'm not some screeching caricature. I just believe in equality, in women having a voice, and in dismantling old systems that hold people back. I thought I had a pretty solid understanding of how the world worked, especially the dynamics between men and women. I thought I knew it all. Then my best friend, Olivia, had her world fall apart, and it took mine down with it. Be my best friend, Olivia. Also 28. If I'm the blueprint for the modern feminist, Olivia is the blueprint for the classic soft girl. It's not an act. She's genuinely one of the most traditionally feminine people I've ever met. She's beautiful in a way that's almost unfair. Not Instagram model beautiful, with sharp angles and perfect makeup. It's a softer, more natural beauty. Long, honey blonde hair that always seems to catch the light, big blue eyes, and a smile that could probably de-escalate a hostage situation. She's the kind of woman who wears sundresses in the fall because she likes how they feel. Her laugh is light and airy. She loves baking, gardening, and talking about feelings. And for as long as I've known her, since we were kids, men have been completely under her spell. It was a law of nature. The sun rises in the east, gravity keeps us on the ground, and men fall for Olivia. It wasn't just attraction. It was a kind of protective instinct she triggered. Guys didn't just want to date her. They wanted to build a fortress around her and slay dragons for her. She never had to try. Her dating life was a revolving door of handsome, successful, ambitious men who would trip over themselves to get her attention. She'd go on one date, and the guy would spend the next month planning their future. This was the established reality for nearly 3 decades. It was Olivia's superpower, until it wasn't. The problem started a few months back. I think it was a Thursday night. I was just settling in to watch some garbage TV when my phone blew up. It was Olivia. A string of crying emojis followed by, "Can I come over?" This wasn't unusual. Olivia was emotional and often needed to vent after a date, usually about how the guy was too into her, and it was overwhelming. She showed up at my door looking like a tragedy, mascara running, wrapped in a pashmina that probably cost more than my rent. I got her a glass of wine and sat her down on the couch. She'd just come from a date with a guy who, on paper, was perfect. An architect, charming, funny, paid for everything, walked her to her car. She said the date was amazing. Amy, he was hanging on my every word. He said I was like a breath of fresh air. He told me he hadn't met anyone like me in years. I was waiting for the but. But he was supposed to text me when he got home. He didn't. I sent him a message this morning saying I had a great time. He hasn't even read it. I gave her the standard pep talk. Liv, calm down. It's been one day. He's probably busy. You know how men are. They try to play it cool. She wasn't having it. She insisted something felt wrong. I didn't think much of it. One guy ghosting her? It happens to everyone. Welcome to the real world, I thought. But then it happened again. A couple of weeks later, she went on a date with a different guy. A doctor, this time. Same story. Incredible first date. He was captivated by her, laughed at all her stories, told her she was special, and then nothing. Radio silence. He didn't block her. He just vanished into the digital ether. Now she was starting to panic. This was 2 in a row. A statistical anomaly in Olivia's world. My feminist brain went into overdrive. I told her it was a clear sign of the times. Men are intimidated by women who have their life together, I said, even though Olivia's life plan was famously fluid. They have commitment issues because of toxic masculinity and dating apps, I lectured. They're not equipped for a real connection with a high-value woman like you. My explanations seemed to soothe her. It wasn't her, it was them. They were broken. She was fine. The theory held up for a while. It was our shield against the confusion. The breaking point came about a month ago. She'd been talking to a new guy for a week, a lawyer. He was clearly smitten, texting her good morning, sending her pictures of his dog, planning a really thoughtful first date at an art gallery because she'd mentioned she liked Monet. The date happened. The next day, Olivia called me, absolutely beaming. "This is it, Amy. I think this one is different. It was the most romantic, perfect evening of my life. We talked for hours. He's smart, he's kind, and he looked at me like I was magic. I was genuinely happy for her. Finally, a decent guy who wasn't a coward." 2 days later, my doorbell rang at 10 p.m. It was Olivia, completely shattered, worse than ever before. The lawyer had gone completely cold. He hadn't blocked her, but his messages were now being delivered and staying unread. He was actively ignoring her. She collapsed onto my couch, sobbing uncontrollably. "What is wrong with me?" she cried. "Am I ugly? Am I boring? Why does this keep happening? They love me, and then they just disappear, like I never existed." Seeing her so broken was awful. This wasn't just dating frustration anymore. This was a pattern that was destroying her self-esteem, the one thing that had always been bulletproof. My usual explanations about toxic men and commitment phobia sounded hollow, even to me. This was something else. A pattern this consistent couldn't just be a coincidence of running into 3 broken men in a row. There had to be a common denominator. I had to figure it out, for her sanity and maybe for my own. My whole worldview was based on a set of assumptions, and this situation was putting a huge crack in the foundation. I looked at her, crying into a cushion, the very picture of the distressed damsel she always played so well. "Okay," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "Stop crying. We're going to figure this out, scientifically." She looked up, confused. "Give me your phone." She hesitated. "Why?" "Because the answer has to be in there," I explained. "You said the dates were perfect, so if something went wrong, it must have happened in the messages before or after. I want to see the evidence. I'm going to prove to you that these guys are the problem." My plan was to go through her chats and build a case, find their inconsistencies, their red flags, their subtle signs of being players or emotionally unavailable. I would be her lawyer, and my closing argument would restore her confidence. She wiped her eyes and reluctantly handed over her phone. It felt like I was holding a black box from a plane crash. The data inside held the answer. I made us both a cup of tea, sat down at my kitchen table, and opened the first exhibit. Case file. Number 1. The architect. I scrolled all the way to the beginning of their conversation on the dating app. Just as she said, he was the one who initiated. His first message was a compliment about her smile. The conversation flowed easily. He asked questions about her. He was engaging, witty, and respectful. No creepy comments, no generic one-word answers. He planned the date, confirmed the time, and texted her beforehand to say he was looking forward to it. My inner prosecutor was frustrated. So far, he was a model citizen. No red flags, 0. I fast-forwarded in my mind to Olivia's account of the date. Perfect. He was a gentleman. Conversation was sparkling. So the turning point had to be after the date. I scrolled past the date itself to the messages from the next day. There it was, a message from him around lunchtime. It read, "Hey Olivia, had a really great time last night. You're even more charming in person. Been thinking about our conversation and it got me curious about something. Just wondering, what's your vision for your career over the next 5 or 10 years? Got any big goals you're working towards?" I read the message twice. It seemed fine. A bit serious for a post-first date text maybe, but not a red flag. He sounded interested in her as a person. Then I saw her reply, sent a few minutes later. Olivia, hey, last night was so much fun. My career. I'm not really a career-driven person, TBH. My dream is to create a beautiful home and be a supportive partner for an ambitious man. I want to be his peace and his biggest cheerleader. I stared at the screen. Okay, a very traditional answer. A little 1950s for my taste, but it was pure Olivia. It was her honest-to-God dream. I scrolled down to see his response. There was none. That was it. The end of the conversation. He had read her message and simply never replied again. Olivia, who was watching me over my shoulder, sniffled. See? He just disappeared. I tried to spin it. Okay, wow. This guy was clearly looking for a networking opportunity, not a girlfriend. He probably wanted a partner who could co-found a startup with him. His loss. What a weirdo, asking about career goals after one date. I sounded confident, but a small seed of doubt was planted in my mind. The question wasn't hostile. It was a question about her future. Her answer defined that future as entirely dependent on someone else. His silence felt less like an insult and more like a conclusion. He got the data he needed and closed the file. I shook the thought away. All right, one weirdo down. Let's check the doctor. I pulled up the second chat. Case file number 2. The doctor. The pattern was identical. He initiated. He was charming. He was complimentary. He made a solid plan for the date. All green flags. Date happens. According to Olivia, it was magical. I scrolled to the messages from the following afternoon. I felt a weird sense of dread. Sure enough, a message from him popped up. It read, Hey Olivia, I hope you have a great day. I really enjoyed our conversation last night. It's rare to meet someone so easy to talk to. A random question for you. Since we were talking about travel and lifestyles, how do you feel about finances in a serious relationship? Are you a fan of pooling everything together, keeping things separate, or something in between? My eyes widened slightly. Another one. Another post-date interview question. This was getting strange. I looked at Olivia's reply. Olivia. Hi, you too. Oh, wow. Such a serious question, haha. I don't really think about money. It stresses me out. I feel like the man should be the provider and handle all the financial stuff. A woman's job is to make his life wonderful so he can focus on succeeding for both of them. She'd even put a little heart emoji at the end. I took a deep breath and scrolled down. His reply came an hour later. It was 4 words. Okay, I understand. Thanks. And that was it. The conversation was over. He never texted again. Olivia saw my expression. What is it? It's another weird question, right? Why are they asking these things? I don't know, I said. And for the first time, I was being completely honest. This is bizarre. My mind was racing. They're all just intimidated cowards theory was crumbling fast. These men weren't intimidated. They were qualifying. They were running diagnostics. They went on the date, confirmed the physical attraction, and basic social chemistry were there. The date was the pass-fail test for the cover of the book. And Olivia always passed with flying colors. But the next day, they were opening the book to the first page and reading. The architect asked about ambition and saw none. The doctor asked about financial partnership and saw a dependent. In both cases, they received an answer that was a fundamental incompatibility with the kind of partnership they were looking for, and their reaction was identical. They didn't argue. They didn't debate. They didn't try to change her mind. They just disengaged. It was efficient. It was clean. And it was ruthless. I felt a chill run down my spine. My friend wasn't being ghosted by emotionally stunted man-children. She was being disqualified by ruthless efficiency experts. I looked at Olivia's tear-streaked face. She had no idea what was happening. She was playing a game, But the rules had changed, and nobody had given her the new manual. She thought her beauty and charm were the cheat codes to win, just like they always had been. But these men had patched the game. They had made her superpower obsolete. "Let me see the last one," I said, my voice quiet. The lawyer. I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly what I was going to find. I felt like a detective at a third crime scene, already knowing the killer's M.O. I opened the chat with the lawyer. It was almost a carbon copy of the first two. Enthusiastic courtship, a thoughtfully planned date, a glowing review from Olivia. And then, the message the next day. The test. The lawyer. "Morning, Olivia. Still thinking about what a great time I had. You have a really captivating energy. I have a question for you that might seem a bit forward, but I value honesty. What does loyalty and compromise mean to you in a relationship? And do you believe the expectations for those things should be exactly the same for both the man and the woman?" This one was the most direct, a straight shot to the heart of relationship philosophy. I held my breath as I read Olivia's response. I could almost hear her saying the words in her light, cheerful voice, completely oblivious to the fact she was taking a final exam. Olivia. "Good morning. I do too. Loyalty is super important. I think a man should be 100% loyal, like a rock, no matter what. That's his role, to be strong and faithful for his woman. A woman is more emotional, you know? She needs understanding, and compromise is mostly on him, because his job is to make his woman happy and feel secure. If she's happy, everyone is happy." I closed my eyes. I didn't even need to scroll down. I knew what I would find. Nothing. He had read her answer and never typed a single letter in response. He hadn't even given her the courtesy of a "thanks for your honesty." He had simply absorbed the information and vanished. 3 for 3. The pattern was no longer a theory. It was a proven theorem. I put the phone down on the table with a soft click. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. The truth was laid out in front of me, in black and white chat bubbles on a glowing screen. The problem wasn't them. It was her. And the most terrifying part, the part that was making my HR-trained, feminist theory-filled brain short-circuit, was that I couldn't even blame them. Their questions were logical. They were the 3 pillars of a modern, long-term partnership: professional ambition, financial strategy, and core values. These men weren't looking for a pretty accessory. They weren't looking for a damsel to rescue. They were looking for a co-pilot. And Olivia, my beautiful, charming, wonderful best friend, was applying for the job with a resume that just said, "I'm pretty." I sat there, staring at the phone, and the pieces just clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. It was like watching a nature documentary. A new kind of predator had evolved, and its prey hadn't adapted. For years, men like these had probably done what men have always done: chase beauty. They'd meet someone like Olivia, get mesmerized by the fantasy she presented, and dive in head first. They'd spend months, maybe even years, trying to build a relationship on a foundation of charm and attraction, only to discover later that their core life goals were completely incompatible. They'd discover her lack of personal ambition only after they were frustrated she wasn't growing with them. They'd learn about her views on finances only when they were arguing about a shared credit card bill. They'd find out about her definition of loyalty only when a real-life crisis hit and tested their partnership. By then, it was messy. Emotions were involved. Lives were entangled. The breakup would be painful, dramatic, and costly in every sense of the word. So they'd learned. They'd been burned. They'd talked to their friends who had been burned. They'd read stories online. And they had engineered a new system, a filter. The first date was no longer the goal. It was the preliminary screening. It was the handshake, the check for basic chemistry, the confirmation that the person across the table matched their pictures. The real interview happened the next day, In the cold, rational light of a text message, they were asking the big, uncomfortable deal-breaker questions up front. They were ripping the Band-Aid off immediately. What are your goals was a test for drive and independence. How do you view money was a test for financial compatibility and a willingness to be a partner, not a dependent. What is loyalty was a test of core values and a check for double standards. Olivia had failed all 3 tests spectacularly. She wasn't just giving the wrong answers. She was giving the exact answers that would send a modern, partnership-oriented man running for the hills. She was articulating a vision of a relationship that was, for them, a nightmare scenario. A one-sided contract where she provides beauty and softness in exchange for a lifetime of security, provision, and emotional labor, all while holding herself to a different standard. And the men's response was the most brutal, efficient thing I'd ever seen. No drama, no arguments, no attempts to fix her or debate her worldview. It was a simple, silent, decisive next. They were treating dating like a recruitment process for the most important job in their lives, their life partner. The cost of a bad hire was just too high. Divorce, financial ruin, years of wasted time. So they were becoming ruthless recruiters. I finally looked up from the phone and met Olivia's gaze. She was watching me, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. She was expecting me to come up with a final verdict that exonerated her, to confirm that these men were, in fact, monsters. I had to tell her the truth. I owed her that. "Liv," I started, my voice sounding strange in the quiet room. "There's a pattern here, and it's not what we thought." I took a deep breath. "They're not ghosting you because they're scared or because they're players. They're screening you." She frowned. "Screening me? For what?" "For the role of a partner," I said gently. "Look at the questions they're asking. They're not small talk. They're asking about your career plans, your financial philosophy, your core values. These are the biggest questions you can ask someone." I picked up her phone and pointed to the screen. "You go on the date. You're charming. You're beautiful. You pass the initial test. They're interested. But then they go home, think about it, and send one single targeted question to see what's underneath the surface." Her face was starting to harden. "What's that supposed to mean? What's underneath the surface?" "Your answers?" I said, trying to keep my voice even. "To the architect, you said you have no career goals beyond supporting a man. To the doctor, you said a man should handle all the money. To the lawyer, you basically said loyalty and compromise are a man's job. Olivia, you're presenting yourself as someone who doesn't want to be an equal partner. You're describing the role of a dependent." The word hung in the air between us. Dependent. I saw a flash of anger in her eyes. It was the first emotion other than sadness I'd seen all night. "I am not a dependent," she snapped. "I'm a woman. I'm describing what a woman should be. Soft, supportive, feminine. It's what men have always wanted. You, with all your feminist ideas, you wouldn't understand." "That's the point, Liv." I raised my voice slightly, the frustration bubbling up. Maybe that's what some men wanted. Maybe that's what our dad's generation wanted. But these men, the successful, ambitious men you want to date, they don't. They've seen it fail. They've seen their parents' messy divorces. They've seen their friends lose everything. They've grown up. They don't want a pretty dependent who needs to be taken care of. They want a co-founder for a company called Our Life. They want someone who will build with them, not just decorate the house they paid for. The dam broke. All her grief and confusion erupted as pure rage. "So I'm supposed to become like you?" She spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "A bitter corporate feminist who thinks relationships are business deals? I'm supposed to talk about budgets and 5-year plans on a second date? That's disgusting. That's not romance." "It's not about being like me," I shot back, standing up now. "It's about being an adult. What do you bring to the table besides being pretty and supportive? Do you have your own goals? Do you have any desire to build something for yourself? Could you support yourself if you had to? Could you support him if he got sick or lost his job? Because that's what a partner does. It's a two-way street. She stared at me, her chest heaving. The look on her face was one of profound betrayal. In her world, I had just switched sides. I had joined the enemy. "You don't get it," she whispered, her voice cracking. "My value is in my femininity, my softness. That's my strength." "No one is saying you have to be less feminine," I said, my voice softening again. I felt exhausted. But softness and strength aren't mutually exclusive. You can be soft and still be resilient. You can be feminine and still be a partner. But your version of femininity sounds a lot like learned helplessness, and these men are spotting it from a mile away. They're not being cruel, Liv. They're being pragmatic. They're protecting themselves. She just shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes again. But these were angry tears. "You're wrong," she said. "They're the broken ones, not me. Real men aren't afraid to provide for their woman." She snatched her phone off the table. "I came here for support from my best friend, not a lecture from my HR manager." Her words stung, but I knew she was lashing out because her entire worldview had just been invalidated. Her superpower, the one thing she'd built her entire identity around, had been neutralized. It was like telling Superman that everyone on Earth had suddenly become immune to his powers. He'd still be Superman, but he'd also be useless. "I'm sorry, Olivia," I said quietly, "but I think you need to hear this. The world has changed. The dating market has changed. The men you want have changed, and you're still using a map from 1985. She didn't say anything else. She just turned, walked to the door, and pulled it open. Before she left, she looked back at me, her beautiful face a mask of hurt and anger. "I'll find a man who appreciates me for who I am," she said, her voice trembling with defiance. Then she was gone, slamming the door behind her. I stood there in my silent apartment for a long time. The half-empty mugs of tea were getting cold on the table. My brain felt like it had been rewired. Everything I thought I knew about dating dynamics, about men and women, felt obsolete. I had always operated under the assumption that men held most of the cards in the dating world, driven by simple, primal urges, while women had to be the cautious, discerning ones. But what I had just witnessed was the complete opposite. These men were the discerning ones. They were cautious. They were thinking 5 steps ahead. They were playing chess, while Olivia was still playing checkers. They weren't afraid of commitment. They were terrified of committing to the wrong person. They weren't intimidated by a beautiful woman. They were wary of what that beauty might be concealing. They'd learned that the prettiest flower can have the most invasive roots. My feminist lens had shown me a world of men who were afraid and inadequate. The reality was so much more complex. It showed me a world of men who were strategic. They had adapted. They had learned from the mistakes of their predecessors and were actively mitigating their risks. The preview text on Olivia's dating profiles might as well have read, "I offer beauty and compliance." And the men who were swiping right were silently thinking, "Initial interest, registered. Proceeding to phase 2, vulnerability assessment." The old saying was that men are afraid of a woman laughing at them, and women are afraid of a man killing them. Looking at this, I realized there was a new fear for men. It wasn't physical. It was systemic. It was a fear of financial and emotional annihilation, a fear of being seen as a utility, a resource to be extracted. They had figured out that the most dangerous person wasn't someone who would hurt them physically, but someone who would drain them emotionally, spiritually, and financially over the course of a decade, all with a sweet smile. Olivia wasn't a bad person. She wasn't malicious. She was just a product of a bygone era, taught a set of values that had become a liability. She was a cassette tape in a world of streaming. I haven't heard from her since that night. I see on social media she's still going on dates. Her posts are all about Twokucha's soft life and Savku's feminine energy. She's doubling down. She hasn't learned. She's hoping to find a man who hasn't either. I don't know if she'll find him. Maybe she will. But sitting there, in the wreckage of my own certainty, I understood the cold, hard text at the end of the preview. These new men aren't afraid of being alone. They're afraid of being with her. And after seeing the evidence, I can't say I blame them.